My interest was piqued in this project. It was last year. I was sent the script and I read it, and I thought it was a very honest tale of grief and bereavement and just loneliness, really. And also, I didn't know Christian at all, but I heard that Peter Mullen was attached, and I'm a huge admirer of Peter's work, and there was a combination of script and Peter, basically, yeah. Okay, my character in the story, on the page, she's written as a buxy blonde lady from Newcastle. And I'm neither buxy or blonde or from Newcastle. So when I met Christian, we had to talk about this because it's written in such a way that it's very much of her personality. It's very much to do with the way she the way she presents herself to the world, and that wasn't going to be possible for me to dye my hair blonde because of other work and stuff like that. So I discussed with Christian ways of what was the nature of their relationship, because it's not on paper, it's very much they know each other, and there is a distinct possibility that that the lady, the female character, is after Jake in a very obvious sort of, not, I don't mean that rudely, but in a very specific way. And I thought, from my point of view, it'd be more interesting if it wasn't that obvious, because I'm not the blonde, I'm not the busty, not that all blondes and busty people are that obvious, which they're not. But it was much more about recognising in another human being loneliness, what brings two people together, apart from meeting in a bar and alcohol. And so that's what sort of stirred my interest in it as well, of trying to make it work for me, per se. And the fact that it takes place in a bar, so alcohol is an enabler in many ways, and sometimes it pushes people to tell stories, to tell privacies, and that they wouldn't necessarily tell if they didn't have that Dutch courage as such. But basically, fundamentally underneath it, they recognise something in each other, and it's the beginning of a friendship. Well, you've got to relate to character in some way. You've got to acknowledge their life, the way, what it is about them that brings them to that place. You've got to empathise with that in order to be able to portray it. So there's the thing of being on your own. I mean, in my head, it's like she's a single woman. I doubt if she's ever been married, but she certainly has children and they've gone. So she is here on her own. That makes her incredibly strong. She's not a conformist in that respect at all. It's brave of her to go out to a pub on her own in a small town. She doesn't. She's not going out looking for a relationship. She's going out because she's friendly with the barmaid, and it's somewhere that she can go and meet people and talk like that. And when you familiarise with yourself with places, you start to recognise faces, and you start to sort of like acknowledge people, but you may not necessarily know them. And living in a small environment, it's a way of getting to meet the community that you're a part of. And I think that's part of the thing with Jake as well. She sees him, she knows that his wife has just died a couple of months ago, but she didn't know him well enough to sort of go to the funeral or anything like that. So there's a lot of unspokenness there, but there's a lot of knowledge about each other too. So that makes it interesting to play as well, because you're not sitting down and doing a proper heart-to-heart with somebody. It's more about recognising the loneliness and the sadness and the regret. Short films, like short stories, are incredibly hard to make work or to write, simply because you've got to have a total arc. You've got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You've got to have a drama within that, and you're taking an audience on a really quick story. You've got 15 minutes. For film time, that isn't that much, but in terms of telling a story, sometimes it's quite a lot. It depends on what your story is packing in. For an actor, it depends on your role. For a director, it's about showing what you can do. For a cinematographer, it's about the shots that you can get in on stuff like that. It's just about showing diversity, but it's a very fine line it's like writing a short story in 500 words. You've got a very limited time and space, and they're incredibly difficult. I got into the business through, basically it was amateur dramatics really. I was in Belfast studying physics, chemistry and biology, and I'd applied to drama schools. And that was my first way in. I joined an amateur group called Fringe Benefits and did lots of different plays, and that was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. So that sort of piqued my interest in it. And then of course you go to drama school and then you keep working, but I started mainly in theatre. Dead. You mean the actual project? I know, of course. I think it's in a few words, it's a delicate tale of a broken man and how he is desperate to recommunicate but is too scared to, and doesn't have the courage in himself to do it. And it's about communication with others and what other people can enable others to do.
Lovely.
Oh, Christian's been fantastic as a director. I mean, I don't know if he's worked before. I don't know Christian I've never worked with him or anything like that, but he's particularly on a short, because you don't have much time. And in order to get the characters instantly, that's what you've got to do. You've got to instantly recognise what these people are, because you don't have time to build them up. So we did a lot of talking about, what's her backstory, what's her, where's she from, what's brought her here. Was because my accent isn't the same as Peter's, so these are obviously people who have come to a particular place. I don't know who is I think my character is the one who's come into this environment. This is Peter's home. She is now creating a home in that environment, but it's not home. It's not where she was born. So you've got to create all of that. He's very open to input and what you've got to say. And also he gives very good notes in terms of what he wants. What he wants you to do, he'll tell you what the shot is, and then for an actor that's incredibly helpful. How tight it is or whatever, or what the angle is. The more information you have on something like this, it's better. It helps to keep the process going. And I think that's the one thing you realise as you get older, even though you may be the director, or you may be the writer, or you may be the actor, or you may be the cameraman, everybody helps everybody. Because somebody's watching you, you're listening to somebody else, and somebody else is watching it on a monitor, and watching something on a monitor is very different to actually looking at somebody face on. It might not read. So everybody needs to help everybody. It's all a process of communication and information being exchanged. So Sai might say, Michelle, don't do that because you can't see that. But so that's where knowing what the shots are, or whatever, so it's all about, that's what you learn the more you work. It's, don't be afraid to fail, or don't be afraid to make a fool of yourself, because that's the only way you find out where your limits are. Be brave, actually, and listen, just keep listening. It's the only way you keep learning. That's what I find, is that nobody should ever think they know it all, because they don't. And it's just watching people like Peter, you know, who's so experienced on camera. And it's sometimes the other thing as well, which opens free, it's looks, it's eyes, it's communication through eyes. It's not necessarily always through dialogue that an audience figures out what's going on. It's about a look. It's about just watching, observing, you know, body language, anything. So, you know, reaction. Well, you know, what can I say? You know, I've loved working with Peter. He's an incredibly generous, gentle, fun-loving man who's wonderful. And I love listening to how he approaches it, because it's basically from the angle of like going, okay, you help me, I'll help you. And it's all about, okay, let's take this back to basics. You know, there's no assumption that simply because of the back work that Peter has done, that he's walking onto a set, he treats it as like, okay, this is a new job, this is almost like a virgin job, so what is the process here? How do you want to do this? What am I looking at? And it gives you courage, because then it means that the next time, even if you are an experienced actor, sometimes you might go onto a set and you see it being so frenetic that you're a bit like, oh God, I don't know, should I say, you know. But you've just got to remember that if you're telling a story, you've got to know the truth of that story. And if you have any doubt in your mind about what your story is or how you're going to tell it, that's going to be transferred onto the screen. So you've got to know exactly what you're doing. And that's one of the things you know, it's been lovely watching Peter. Yeah.